Right, so we're just doing a bit of work on the interior of this one then. It's currently e-coated, as you know, and the plan for this one is it's going to be going into our Noble Cobra. So it's basically the Noble equivalent of the more commonly known, I suppose, of Raptor. A lot of people know what Raptor is, but it's basically a truck bed lining, so super tough, really durable. Decent sound insulation properties as well. But what we're going to do on this one, because it's e-coated, and as you guys know, the epoxy for us is a wet on wet epoxy, so we're just going to spray one coat of epoxy over the interior panels first, mask the car up obviously, one coat of epoxy, and then straight on with our Noble Cobra. Again, just to protect the inside really. Enzo doesn't like the blower, as you can tell. Yeah, Enzo's a pain. Anyway, as I was saying, it's just a protectant really, so none of this is going to be visible. Absolutely none of this on the inside of the car is visible whatsoever. It's all carpet lined, etc. Same for the boot. Not a single piece is actually visible, but it's just about protection, a bit of sound insulation, and whilst we've got access to it, why not, sort of thing really. So it's just better to get a few layers on there rather than not doing anything with it at all. So that's the route that we're going. The reason for the epoxy is because the Cobra doesn't necessarily go straight over the top of E-coat. It's not in the TDS, but we know we're safe with the epoxy, and it's just one extra waterproof barrier as well, so it's worth doing. It'll help with the adhesion for the Cobra, and yeah, again, just the right way to do things. So we'll mask up the whole outside of the car now, and then get that sprayed tomorrow. All right, Enzo. Can't do anything with this boy around. He doesn't like the blower, he doesn't like the hoover. Always play, isn't it, Enzo? Okay, so we've done a reverse mask on this one. That's what I call it anyway. A bit unusual because obviously we're masking from the outside in. Normally we'd be doing it exactly the opposite way to how we've done this one, but obviously we're painting the inside. Just got to take some trim pieces off and things still. We've given it a decent scuff up as much as possible. You'll remember again from previous videos, the epoxy that we use, 385, does not actually need a scuff on the E-coat, so it can go straight over the top of this with 2 panel wipes. It's had 3, but I just wanted to scuff up partially from the overspray that we got in there before, just to give it a bit of a better chance. But again, I remember none of this is visible. I tried to say that in yesterday's video with Enzo barking in the background, but absolutely none of this is visible. It's already e-coated, so it technically doesn't need any further protection either, but it's just a case of we may as well do it now. It's going to make the job that bit better. Yeah, it's worth doing when we can get to the areas like this. This car is never going to be like this ever again, so why not? But yeah, just remember, all of this is completely and totally hidden, so actually the finish on it doesn't even really matter. It's more just for the protection sake of things, and basically because why not? Right, let's get a coat of epoxy on there, see how that goes. Yeah, wish me luck. Back in the booth. So we applied the epoxy this morning. So this is a wet on wet system like we said before. So 385 that we've gone for with this one. So it's not in the classic car range as such, but it's in the spectral range instead. It's technicalities really. But basically all that means is it's a wet on wet application. So we could have put the Cobra on after 15 minutes, or 15 to 20 minutes flash at 20 degrees. But anything up to 12 hours basically, so I could leave this and within a 12-hour window I could come back and spray the Cobra directly on the top of it. So we've just done that because I previously mentioned, I think, adhesion issues, and it just gives it one extra layer of protection as well. Obviously the epoxy is what gives it the corrosion resistance on top of the e-coat that it's already got. So again, this is not a necessary stage, it's just making that job, or this job, that one little bit better. So the way that we apply this, it can be applied in 3 different ways, and everything in between as well. So you can go through a Schutz gun and put it on really, really thick, no thinning necessary at all, or a 2.5 or a 1.8. We're gonna go with a 2.5 today, which is my poly gun normally. But that gives it a moderate texture, so fine, coarse, moderate, but this is going to be a kind of a medium texture to it, which means I think it's a 5% thinners added to the mix as well. We'll just give it 1, maybe 2 coats if I've got enough, but it only really needs 1 coat. Super thick, extremely durable, chemical resistant, sound deadening, all of that good stuff. So yeah, smash that on now. Not the easiest to get around, but it should look really good when it's done.
Just an animal in human form. There's no need to settle down, down, down. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Baby, let your love run wild, wild, wild. There's a jungle out there, you know, baby girl.
Okay, I'm actually very pleased that we have the videos to prove that I have actually done something on this one, because in many ways, let's be honest, it looks very, very similar to how it did this morning. Obviously it was e-coated black to start with, wasn't it? So it doesn't really look a great deal different to how it did this morning on this particular car. But it is now protected, it's got an epoxy layer, it's got obviously the bed liner on there, the Cobra. This does dry with a kind of a sheen to it, so it's a little bit more glossy now than it will be when it's completely dry. But yeah, it's just that one extra layer of protection. This now has to sit overnight, and then I think it's fully hardened after 7 days. That's just in respect to chemical resistance, all that sort of thing, dropping petrol on it, anything like that. But yeah, to all intents and purposes, this is done, and it is looking good, nice and fresh. We have now got to keep this clean in terms of when we're doing the masking on the rest of the car and polywork, bodywork, all of that. We have to obviously mask this off really, really well because we don't want to get any overspray on this section now, even though it's covered. But yeah, nicely protected. On to the next stages then. Further supporting evidence to the fact that we seem to have become a classic car restoration shop. Not that this one's in for a restoration, but anyway, this old Morris has turned up today, so fairly obvious what the damage is on this one, and this is just an improve only sort of deal as well. So the story behind this one was that it had a car cover on it, I believe, and it's just caused some hairline cracks in the paint. But those hairline cracks have obviously turned into what you can see now. So obviously we've had a paint failure going on here as well. I'm going to presume that the paint was applied incorrectly. Yeah, because it's shrunk back massively. So there's a lot of things that can cause that. Potentially too much hardener in there, or just the wrong kind of paint altogether for the car. I don't know, not sure without knowing exactly what's happened to this one in the past. We know that the boot's been painted in the past, but yeah, something has clearly happened here because that paint has shrunk back massively. So only option for this one is to strip it off and start over. There's a massive difference between a repair job on a normal car and what goes into the classic cars. So I think I'll do a step-by-step on this one. I'll show you guys what is involved, because this one is going to be done properly now. We'll get this one done the right way. The only part where it does fall down in some respects is obviously the adjacent panels. We can't go too far on these. That's not what this job was in for. It is just the customer's just wanting these better than they are now. So we'll do, again, what I call an improve only, but done the correct way. But I can't start chasing the whole car around. We'll polish these up a little bit, but again, you've got a lot of issues going on with this, so I can't go too far on that either. So I am limited to what I can do. Colour-wise, we should be able to get pretty much spot on. We'll see in a second. Clear coat wise, it's going to be new versus old, and there's not a great deal I can do about that without chasing the whole car around. But regardless, we will do a step-by-step just so you guys can see a little bit of what's involved on the classics. Yeah, different process altogether really, but see what we can do. Okay, so the first step on this then is just to do a quick polish up of the adjacent panel. So Tig's just using a mini polisher just to get rid of any swirls, any haziness, get the colour back to what it should originally be, and we'll get it on the Spectro. Next up then, just back into the mixing room. We've loaded up onto the system what we've just scanned, so we'll see what the computer spits out for us. So on this one, all we've got at the moment is a 1.56 match as the best corrected version. So that's not great, to be honest. We know that this boot's been painted before in the past, and it is a slightly different shade already to the rest of the car. So what we're going to do on this instance is we'll make a spray out card out of that colour, and we'll try and recorrect it again then with a Spectro, see if we can get a little bit closer. Important then with our system to get the right ground shade. So we go from P1 to P5, P3 being a mid shade, and that's what most things call for as a P3. So I'm just going to spray some wet on wet primer on those spray out cards. Luckily I've got a race helmet to do at the same time, cycling race helmet. So I'll just get that into P3 as well. I'm doing more spray out cards than I need, just so that we've got some P3s left over for future spray out cards. So trying to cover everything in this video, it seems like. Quick question from one of the subscribers. Alex, this is for you. Gun setup and different uses. This is just 3 of, I think we've probably got about 7 or so. Please excuse the state of them, they are horrific at the moment. They do need a very, very good clean. This is the oldest gun that I've had, my most trusty gun that I have in the whole shop, to be fair. So this is our solvent gun essentially. It's an HVLP, it's a 1.3 setup on there. You can see the tip there. Dirty, because like I said, it's years old, this thing, but it does the job. The polygon that I talked about before, this is a 2.5, so you can see the nozzle size on that, absolutely enormous. So this is for the spray poly, essentially. It's laying the sprayable filler. That's the only thing that we use that for, really, and sometimes obviously the Cobra that we've just used on that car there, so massive tip size on that. Coming on to what we use for colour. 5500X SATA again, 5500X 1.3 setup, and an eye nozzle on this. So again, you can see the difference between a 1.3 and a 2.5. It's enormous. But the way we run this for the colour is 2 bar. See on the digital scale there, 1.9. Can't adjust it with one hand, but it will be adjusted with the screw on the back there. That adjusts the pressure, so we'll run that at 2 bar. Full fluid, full fan, so a bit boring from that side of things, to be fair. All of the guns are run at full fluid and full fan. I kind of tend to regulate the amount of fluid coming out of them just by squeezing the trigger myself, doing it manually. I will sometimes change it. You would have seen in the previous video as well doing the Cobra. I will sometimes change it to a sort of a nozzle jet rather than the full flan, just for the areas that I can't get the gun into so easily, so you can make it a bit more pointy and get into those areas. But yeah, for normal base coat, full fluid, full fan, off we go. Solid colour on this one, as we know. It's a little bit different with the metallics, but that's just purely based to our system in any case. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail, because that is very, very Noble specific and Spectral Wave, so that's specific. But yeah, basically 1.3, 1.3, that's our solvent gun. This is our water-based gun. 2.5 is the poly gun. Got a 1.8 for primer, full fluid, full fan, and then the clear coat gun is a bit different again, but I'll show you guys that a little bit later on. Imposter of the range, Iwata, WS400 Series 2 for the clear. This is the only gun that I don't use SATA for, so I do have a 5500X SATA as well. I just don't get on with it. Used to love it, to be fair, but ever since trying this one, I've never looked back and it's never ever been used. Actually, Kayla's got it at the moment. I don't even use the thing at all, so I don't think she's getting on too well with it either, to be fair. But yeah, anyway, clear gun again. We are set to 2 bar on the regulator. Full fluid, full fan, so a bit boring. Again, you can see this spray pattern with the Iwata is absolutely fantastic. So clear these now, and then on to the next. So the spray out card we've just done is 1.56 on the system, and as you can see, it's not very good, but it's not expected to be either. 1.56 is not a good match, it's not a blendable match. It's not a million miles away, but it's certainly not good enough. Plan now is to remeasure it. I'll show you now. Let's go next door now. So try and make sense of this again then. So it's come up with the closest possible match that it has was a 9.7, which is actually a Renault colour. And that's corrected to 1.56, which again, you can see they're all red, which basically means it's not a good enough match. The computer already knows that. It's the closest match that we have at present. But what we've done now is obviously done that spray out card. So we can now hit measure on the system. And eventually, it hopefully should throw out something a little bit better for us. Not sure if it's going to be good enough still. Soon find out. Next day, so back in the booth with this one, and just warming the booth up at the moment. It's 2 degrees outside at the moment, so I've got the burners on, just warming this panel up. Obviously gone back to bare metal, as you can see. It's the only correct way to do a job like this. Obviously where we had a paint failure before, yeah, only way to guarantee the job from our side of things now going forwards is to get it back to bare, so that's what we always do. First up for this one is our epoxy then, as always. Okay, so we've gone in with 3 coats of the high build on top of the epoxy. Got to let this cure now, and then it's going to be blocking it down with a 400 on a block, and then 500 on a DA with an interface pad just to refine it, and then it'll be ready for our wet on wet stages. All sanded, so back in the booth again. So all we've done at this stage is just panel wipes it down, masked the back end obviously, and put a tiny amount of epoxy, sprayable aerosol epoxy in this instance, just on the edges where we've broken through ever so slightly, just again for corrosion resistance. So next stage is going to be our wet on wet primer, which is the P3 shade. Gives us that good ground coat, good adhesion, and the correct shade for the colour to go on. So wet on wet, two coats of colour, 2 coats of clear, we'll be done. Right then guys, that's this one done. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea about what goes into a job like this and a bit more detail. To be fair, I thought there was going to be actually a lot more work involved with this one. But when we got back to bare metal on the boot, it was in remarkably good condition, so it didn't really need any filling work or anything like that, so we managed to skip that stage at the least. But yeah, the hardest thing on a job like this was really getting the colour match right. But again, as you can see on the rest of the car, it's got issues absolutely all over this one, so we've done what we can. I think it's come out quite nicely for what it was there. Again, got to remember the boot was repainted previously in any case, so it was never good to start with. Obviously the main issues were quite evident, and realistically the customer in this instance, he just wanted it better than it was. Really wasn't that concerned about it, to be honest, so I think on that basis we've done very well. But yeah, a little bit more of an in-depth video for you guys, just to show what kind of does go into a job like this. And you know, again, I didn't show nearly half of it. The amount of hours that goes into just making the spray out cards alone is quite a lot. But yeah, that's what we do to get the job done right in any case. So with that being said, I think that's where I'm going to leave you for this week, guys. Next week is a very busy old week for us. I've got a lot of things planned in, so hopefully some of you tune in for that. But have a good weekend in the meantime. I'll catch you all then.